Happy Father's Day. There you go. Why not celebrate? I think one of the things that we have to start with Father's Day, celebrating Father's Day with dad jokes. So here we go. I'm so good at sleeping that I can do it with my eyes closed. Where's the drum? But Mom said I should do lunges to stay in shape. That would be a big step forward. Time flies like an arrow. Fruit flies like a banana. It's a little harder to get, I think. So y'all work on that one while I say this one. At first, I thought my chiropractor wasn't any good, but now I stand corrected. Father's Day is always a complicated day for some people when they think about their fathers. I think it's also true of mothers, but it seems like we particularly have had in this country over the time that I've been alive, a more complicated relationship with our fathers than our mothers. At least I want to work a line of thought around this, which is basically that we have an ideal, and when the ideal's not met, we have a problem with it, right? We have an ideal that our fathers should be many things, and most of our fathers couldn't do all that. And so there's a part of us that holds back our love and affection for him, and therefore we essentially are holding back a little bit of love and affection for ourselves. And so that's the premise of what I'm going to say today, and I think it's also true of the country. So, we're celebrating Father's Day and Juneteenth. And Juneteenth is also a reminder of the very same process that we have with our fathers that we have with the country. That the country started off with the Declaration of Independence, and much of what was in the Constitution was really written around this idea that people were created equal, that there was certain protections that everyone would have. We would be all in this together. But it wasn't really all-inclusive at the time, but the words were. And so we have the ideal of the words, but we haven't had the ideal of the fact. And so many of us hold a complex relationship with the country as well. But as we do so, it perhaps is stunting to our growth not to be forgiving and to be understanding and to realize that this arc of history that we're on and the arc of our family have some resemblances that are similar. And so we, as the next generation, and our children as the next generation, should take what is good from us as fathers, as parents, and take from the country what is good for the country as it is, and make improvements. And as John Lewis would say, somewhere in here in this stack of wonderful quotes, John Lewis, the congressman that died, that was so well known for his civil rights work, basically said, if I don't find it in the next hour, it won't matter. I know it's on the next page. There we go. Ours is not the struggle of one day, 1 week, or 1 year. Ours is not the struggle of one judicial appointment or one presidential term. Ours is the struggle of a lifetime, or maybe even many lifetimes. And each one of us, in every generation, must do our part. Barbara Jordan, remember her? Barbara Jordan said this: what people want is simple. They want America to be as good as its promise. And that's essentially what I'm saying. But it takes generations for families to develop. It takes generations for this country to develop. And so while we celebrate on Juneteenth, the last people to be emancipated down in Texas, we also would like to be emancipated, both from the sins of our society and the sins of our family. But we can't do it by totally rejecting everything that came before. Unlike how we would like it to be. Many of us have grown very strong by having something to work against. Our parents were as not wasted. They could always be a bad example, right? Sometimes our fathers were having a very difficult time, and they pass that on to us. Like people say so often, hurting people hurt. I was talking with someone in the last week about this notion of 7 generations. You've heard that statement that the sins of the father are carried on for 7 generations. And I've also thought that our country has gone to war every generation that I can remember. And the PTSD or the suffering that has happened or the trauma that comes to the men who, and mostly men up until quite recently, even now, mostly men, the trauma that comes is passed down for 7 generations. So at no point in our country's history have we been beyond war, and therefore beyond trauma that is passed down to the next. And so much, I think, of what has been passed down that has been difficult for people is not that they wanted to be bad, it's that they were having a very difficult time. So I always do a Father's Day talk with the concept embedded in it that we should forgive. That we should forgive our fathers for being not the ideal that we held them out to be. Not that we would like to imitate that. Not that it was really something we want to excuse and say that was okay. It was not really okay, but we also need to forgive because the forgiveness is the spiritual transformation. Forgiveness is magic. It's on another level than average social interaction. Forgiveness takes what is, shall we use the word, what is evil, what is bad, and makes it a beginning of the holy. When we forgive, we are moving toward the holy. And if we didn't have something to push against, we wouldn't be as compelled to move toward the holy. To learn forgiveness and the release that happens in our soul when we forgive, that is the spiritual blessing hidden inside that which was wrong. Jesus on the cross, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do. It was his forgiveness that allowed the resurrection in so many ways. It is the transformation through forgiveness that allows people to live freely with a past that was not perfect, to live and take a deep breath. Many times it is only when we forgive that we can finally relax our minds and they don't have to circle that which was unpleasant, wrong, or even evil. So forgiveness is how the magic happens, how we convert that which was ungood to good in ourselves. Many things in spirituality are like that. Have you noticed? You take the person who is addicted, they go to the 12-step program, and they seem to rocket forward into a deeper level of understanding than they ever would have before. And they can say to their own addiction, many have, thank you. I would not be the person I am without you. And so let's hold a space for our fathers in such a way that we can recognize we may not want to be like that, or we wish they weren't like that. But we also hold the sacred space of forgiveness that will heal the wounds. And I believe there's some magic in that for the future as well. When we forgive, we set a different energetic state in the family for 7 generations as well. We have a chance to explore what it's like to be whole and healthy and free. And if we wanted to be like Jesus and forgive 70 times 7, and find that in that is the redemption itself, our forgiving is the power. We gain power when we forgive. We don't get less. We become stronger. I hear people's stories often. And somewhere in that story is that knot where it has not been released. You know what I'm talking about? And it will not be released. If you tell that story 1,000 times, it won't be released unless you forgive. And with that, you can change the story. And I think it's easy for me to ask for forgiveness when it comes to our country. You know, I'm in that very privileged class. I have a woman friend who said, I came in second. She goes, you came in first. Because I'm a white male with many, many privileges and very few societal drawbacks. And she did almost as well. She's a white woman. And so many of us who are white have had it really easier than we can quite get. We might not quite understand, but if you'll allow me to indulge myself, I ask your forgiveness for me and everybody else who didn't know and didn't help. Just like fathers, we have made mistakes. We have been in relationship, but maybe not hadn't done that well. And so we're able to live out our lives, but our collective lives together would be so much richer if we could both come to realize the sins of the past in the context of doing better and of forgiveness. Now, if we keep it up, it's always hard to forgive people who are keeping it up, isn't it? Really hard. I've had people come to me and they say, oh, how do I forgive my mother? She's always doing this. Well, as long as she's doing it, it's probably going to be really hard. So we both have a game to play, our part of the game to play. But collectively as a country and us as individuals, we have to realize that we are really one big family. We look a little different from each other, but largely we're all the same. You know, we have a head and arms and legs, and we have desires. We have the same desires. We wish to love and be loved, to grow and become. That our children will do the same. We wish all these things. We are one family. And the more we live as that, in which we honor each other and come to the other like a father. A father protects. A father loves. A father provides. A father teaches. A father is there to lean on. When we all come as the father of the family that we are all part of, we make room for a whole new world, for a world in which it's shiny and pure and happy. And when our fathers did that for us, they made room for us to grow and become as much as we can. There's a quote that I won't even bother looking for the sake of time. It says, fathers have patience. Good fathers have a lot of patience. Great fathers have a tremendous amount of patience. Good fathers know that they are not perfect, but they do know they're important. And you don't have to be perfect to be in community and be in a family. You just have to do what you can. Harmon Killebrew, remember the baseball player? His father is out playing with his two sons. And the mother comes out and says, "You're tearing up the grass." And the father says, "We're not raising grass, we're raising children." There is a quote I really hope I'll find here fairly quickly. And that is this. Barack Obama. Someone said that every man is trying to live up to his father's expectations or make up for their father's mistakes. My father when I think back on it, I remember there was a time period in my 30s when I thought my father was I was standoffish with both my parents. I was going through maybe a late adolescence, I'm not really sure, but I was having a little bit of a difficulty with them. And I was actually doing quite terribly in my own life. I was unhappy. I wasn't being successful in the work I was doing. It was a bad decade. My father wrote me this letter in his own handwriting. And my father couldn't spell. He was a really smart guy, but he couldn't spell, and he passed that down to me. But he wrote this letter. He was an engineer, and he wrote it in an engineer script. Do you know what I mean? The block letters. Telling me of his time when he was in his late 20s, early 30s, in which he had taken my mother's inheritance and invested in a business and totally tanked it and was kiting checks to keep it afloat and was... Now, I also, when I thought back on it, also realized that he had just built a house and had 2 young boys, and he's trying to do this business from Sanford here in Raleigh, and the whole thing is going south in a hurry. He writes this letter to tell me that he hasn't always been perfect, that he hasn't always been successful as he was later in life. And he hasn't always been the man that was honest and strong and true either. He did that so that I would realize that he was a man of compassion as well as demands and expectation. And I think this outreaching of the imperfect parent to the child and saying, I did my best and it was pretty bad, is compassion writ large. To let those who are younger than you, that you're in a model for, to know that you struggle, that you didn't know how to do it. I mean, when I think about my father, I'm 3 times his age right now when he started a family, almost 3 times. How many of us know in our 20s what to do with life? How many of us know in our 20s enough to be generous to those who are so like us that we can see their faults so clearly? How many of us can realize that your parents projected on you their hopes and dreams, not because they were mean to you, but because they loved you? And they had not the awareness that, oh, this maybe is really more about me than you. They don't have that in that moment. They say things, they do things that could be really harsh for you. But they had an intent that you be better than they were. So that's how we forgive. We come to some understanding. We come to some agreement that we might have done the same thing as we grew up. We come to this point where we recognize that the arc of history is best improved when we begin with forgiveness and we take the lessons and we do something better with them. Let's be good to our fathers, because they're living inside us now. Do you know what I mean? To not forgive, as Buddha would say, is to hold hot coals in your hand, getting ready to throw them at someone. Swallowing poison, hoping they will die. Wasting your life, another way of saying it. To be in an unforgiveness, to be in ungenerosity, to think and judge another is to shrink who you are, because they live inside you as much as they live outside you. And the very thing you're condemning on the outside is a reflection of what you see on the inside. And therefore, when you condemn them, you condemn yourself. And you live in a state of non-grace. But when you give your grace, when you accept that others are as they are, and that's okay, you make room for them, but also you expand the space inside you for yourself. And this imperfect world that we are plowing through for 80 years will be like that the whole time. It's okay. It's the way it's made. It's not your fault or their fault. So let us do this on Father's Day. Let's commit ourselves to recognizing that the Father lives within us. Jesus, we're going to move this a little bit towards spirituality now. Jesus, it's always a good place to start, isn't it? You want to talk about spirituality, talk about Jesus. What did Jesus call God? There we go. This is obviously not a black church yet. So Jesus calls God Father, and the real word he uses is in the New Testament is Abba. Abba means daddy. Doesn't mean father as in father figure, father. It's mean like the loving, caring one. And the one that is so close to you and so like you that you and that are of the same skin, same flesh, same spirit. I and the Father are one. But he also said you are God's children as well. That your Father is really not a hateful, harsh person, but daddy. He's your daddy. Who's your daddy? He's your daddy. He's your daddy. The one who held you when you were little, laughed with you, tickled you, fed you with the bottle. This is the image he portrays over and over of the divine, that this is the same substance that you are, and that it is willing and able to nurture, expand your world, and to encourage you. It is willing to do that because it wants for you the same things you want for yourself. And it is the perfect example of what it is to be a father, and to be a father to yourself, to trust, to have confidence in, to believe in, to make you more important than things. This is how you father yourself. You recognize that you and the Father are one, and the very things that you want and need, the world wants it, the divine, the universe, however you say it, wants and needs you to have it as well. And it also wants to honor you, respect you, care for you, be with you, guide you, etc., etc. It is partnering with you. It is not taking any of your power away. To say, Daddy, Let's do this together. And this is the relationship on the spiritual level that is the example we have for the physical level. This is the ideal relationship that we talk about, that we dream about, that we hold human beings to. This is why the words also why we have held this country to such a high level as well of expectation. Because those words seem inspired. They speak of high ideals. So it's an interesting game to live pointing at the high ideals and forgiving when it is not fulfilled. This is the spiritual tension that we live in when we're trying to do our best. Hold to the ideals. Be inspired by the ideals. And in the case of the divine, be lifted and guided by that energy and wisdom. But also, when things don't go your way, forgive, let go, stand up, and move on. Let us pray. Let us bring to mind the words of Jesus. When he's talking about the vine, he is the vine, as God is the vine and we are the branches. Let us remember those words. How we are an expression of that one great oneness, the one presence, the one power. Let us stand in that energy. And from this place of being that one presence, one power, let's look back on that which has been the story we have told. Let us untie any knots in that story that we need to. From this place of oneness with the divine. Let us untie it not as though we were weak and helpless, but as though we are part of God. Let us take the beautiful lessons that we have learned as well. Add them to the wealth of who we already are. Count them. Be grateful for all the blessings. And for this moment, let us feel into the presence of the divine in us or around us, perhaps speaking to us or merely waiting for our invitation. May it say these words somehow in some form. I am here, with you, for you, and as you. All will be well. And so it is. Amen. I hope you got something out of today's service. We intend to bring you things that will help you in your life become more of who you want to be, give you the freedom of forgiveness and the hope of expectancy that your life will unfold in a way that brings you joy, happiness, and is a contribution to the world. If you would like to contribute to this ministry, please go to unitytriangle.org, hit the donate button, and it will lead you into an easy way of doing that. We thank you for your attention and look forward to seeing you again here.